Well, good evening and welcome back to Pocatello, Idaho, the beautiful Portneuf Valley, gateway to the great Northwest. This is Wednesday Night Live. I am your award-winning host, Ralph Lillig, and I'm glad you could join us again. Hope you had a pleasant Thanksgiving holiday, as is the case with most of us, suppose, you're going to have to do some heavy-duty walking and working to get some of the goodies off your tummy. But fear not, we have 3 weeks until Christmas, and we get to do it again. And for the next month or so, we're going to be putting on the pounds. Anyway, I'd like to start off tonight, as I do every Wednesday at this time, and remind you about Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, 478-HOPE. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a Christ-centered, nonprofit ministry offering life-affirming alternatives to abortion and compassionate care to those who face pregnancy and abortion-related issues. And as I tell you every week at this time, they don't have millions of dollars. They don't get to rip off the government for billions in our tax dollars, so they need your help. They are there to help a mother in distress, a baby that may be coming into the world. They need your financial help as well as any other help you can afford them. So if you would call them, the area code is 208-478-HOPE. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. See what you can do to help a mother, help a baby, and you're going to feel very good about yourself. And I'm sure God will bless that. Well, I don't have to tell you, if you've watched the news for any time at all, the last couple months, well, since August, have been absolutely crazy with this thing in Ferguson, Missouri. And now tonight it's going in New York. I heard something today, and I think I've got to pass this along to you. We've seen this farce that's going on in Ferguson. It's about played itself out now, and we've seen the usual suspects come in to stir the pot. The President of the United States, Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, the Black Caucus, NAACP. Isn't it interesting that the police departments are always being criticized and ridiculed now about profiling, and yet who's doing the profiling? Is it not these people in Ferguson who are saying that every black police or every white police officer is automatically a racist and gun happy and waiting to kill a black person? I'd say that's a profile. And so I'm going to share with you. You saw this silliness about hands up, don't shoot. How about pants up, don't loot? Pants up, don't loot. Pants up, don't loot. I understand that there's somebody's been collecting money for that. Pants up, don't loot. And they're going to put a sign somewhere near Ferguson, I'm told. I haven't verified that yet. Pants up, don't loot. This whole thing in Ferguson was not about grief for somebody who was killed. This was not about trying to set things right. This was anarchy, pure and simple anarchy. Criminal activity by criminals, destroying a town. Many, if not most of them, don't even live there. The people who are stuck with the bill now, some 30 businesses, I guess, have gone out of business, burned out, or robbed, stolen, completely burglarized out. Hannity had a very good program on last night where he showed faces of, they have all this footage of the people doing the burglaries. One fellow you can clearly see is starting the fire in the one grocery store. Another fellow you can see, they didn't say anything about it. I happened to notice while they were talking about it was an outside scene, and a police car was sitting at the curb. People were gathered around, and there's a guy with a big white can of, like those plastic cans you use for the barbecue starter, squirting the police car. They're about to ignite the police car. Pure and simple arson. Well, anyway, I've got a few videos I want to share with you tonight. Not everybody agrees with Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and the Black Caucus, NAACP, Barack Obama, Eric Holden, and the rest of the usual suspects. Not everybody agrees with that. About a month and a half ago, roughly, there was an interview on Fox News with a fellow, he's a minister, Reverend, get it right, Jonathan Gentry from the San Fernando Valley, adjoining Los Angeles. And are we ready on that first one, Josh? Let's see what Reverend Gentry had to say.
Story prompting many to ask for peaceful protests, including our next guest. We told you about him yesterday, and you heard from him possibly online on your own. This has gone viral.
What we're doing out here is not helping. Change is not going to come until we change it. And I hate to say this, but I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, opposing to what you want to hear. All we know how to do is blame the police and white folks for our actions. All we know how to do is march and riot and loot. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm not going to tell you we going to march, we going to do this, we going to do that. I'm going to tell you, damn it, let's change.
Joining us now is that very man, Minister Jonathan Gentry. Jonathan, thanks for being with us. That is a 6 minutes packed with passion. Why did you want everyone to hear what you had to say?
It's a continual cycle. Thank you for having me. It's just a constant cycle. It's like we're just going around in circles year after year, decade after decade. Excuses, excuses, excuses is all we bring. Time and time again. It's just enough. Let's take responsibility for what we're doing out here.
What did you make of when Al Sharpton, the Reverend Al Sharpton, showed up to town? Because, you know, a lot of people said, "What, Reverend, why don't you go up to Chicago? There's killings everywhere in Chicago. You could bring the cameras to Chicago and talk about it there." Instead, they go into Ferguson. What was your response to him showing up?
Gilbert Arenas is absolutely right. Where were you in Chicago on 4th of July weekend when over 60 drive-by shootings took place? Where were you a couple weeks later when 47 shootings took place in Chicago? Where were you when that woman in Oakland lost both of her children 3 weeks apart? Where were you? You only come around when something happens with the police or Caucasians. You're not there for the black community, so you need to stop fronting NAACP as well. I want to call them out as well. They're good for nothing. All they do is perpetuate hate. I represent humanity. It's just from my heart. Humanity. God came for humanity. You know, enough with our excuses. And this came from, and let me say this, this came from the rebellion of the two gentlemen. Unfortunately, he lost his life. Understand, let's subtract race and police from the equation. If you two brothers would have just moved to the sidewalk like the officer said, we would not be here. If you would have just moved to the sidewalk and obeyed, we would not be here. 1 Samuel 15:23, rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. This went from stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Here we are, stage 5, total chaos.
Jonathan, you say that you have been pulled over a number of times in your car by an officer, and you say the way you handle it is how people should handle it. I listened to your entire rant. What's the difference here? You said we actually need to change. What if someone believes that they are being pulled over because of their race? How are they to handle that?
I've been pulled over. That's why I mentioned that. I've been pulled over many times. Many times. I have a brand new vehicle. I live in a valley. It's all customized. I've been pulled over. I know how to act when I'm pulled over. That's our problem. You picking on me because I'm black. What you doing that for? It just escalates. Humble yourself. The Bible says in Proverbs 15 verse 1, soft answer turns away wrath. Swallow your arrogance. Whatever that they got to do, whatever they put you over for, if you didn't do nothing, what's the problem? Well, that's our problem today. We're just so uptight about everything. It's sickening.
Right. Now, Jonathan, I can tell you're fed up. What kind of reaction have you gotten? I know you're getting a lot of views. What kind of feedback?
This is positive feedback. Of course, the black community, oh, you Uncle Tom, yada, yada. Honestly, the only Uncle Toms I see, and I want to say another word, are the ones burning down your own community. Sorry to say. Right. I'm not Al Sharpton. I'm not NAACP. I'm not going to go down there and say, we going to do this, we going to be okay. No. Let's change our ways.
What would you like to see from the President of the United States? A lot of people think, you know what, he might have missed an opportunity here to speak directly to the black community. What do you think that the President, here was the President speaking yesterday from Martha's Vineyard. I'm going to play this soundbite and get your response. Take a listen.
I know that emotions are raw right now in Ferguson, and there are certainly passionate differences about what has happened. There are going to be different accounts of how this tragedy occurred. There are going to be differences in terms of what needs to happen going forward. Now's the time for healing. Now's the time for peace and calm on the streets of Ferguson. Now is the time for an open and transparent process to see that justice is done.
Jonathan, your response to that?
Same old song and dance. We heard it from Trayvon Martin. You didn't say nothing in Chicago when it was a war zone where you came from. You didn't say anything about that. Why this? Why this is just PR, in my opinion.
And the Cambridge
Someone handed him a note and said, speak.
Right. Well,
it's hard for me to swallow.
Well, Jonathan, listen, everything you're saying, I hear it, I understand, but I'm just thinking about somebody at home right now and saying, well, Jonathan Gentry is giving in to the fact that there might be racial bias in this country, and you just said, well, there is, so deal with it and make the best of it. How do you stop the behavior you don't like, being pulled over because possibly you're black? Because you have the right answers is one thing, but the fact that you're pulled over, people say is unacceptable.
Your question is what? What's your question?
Question is, what do you say to people sitting at home saying, by answering the questions and getting along, identifying that you're pulled over because of race, and dealing with it is giving in?
The problem is our reaction. It's how we respond. It's how we respond. You understand? Those two men, Mike Brown and his friend, challenged the police. He told you to move to the sidewalk. You said, no, we're going to wait till we get to our destination. That's our problem today as African-American males and African-Americans. We just feel like we're constantly challenged, so it's an ego thing. It's just a competition, and it doesn't help. Someone has to humble themselves. I just realize these officers are doing their job. I understand there are bad cops out there. Yes, I understand. But some of these gentlemen, officers, and my heart goes out to all of them, they have an extreme stressful job. Let them do their job and be on your way. It just takes a couple minutes. Swallow your pride. Sure. That's the only way we're going to get ahead.
Jonathan, we want to thank you for being with us here. You know, certainly some will say that you had extreme statements with us this morning, but we thank you for being frank and honest.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Now, Reverend Gentry is not the only voice on the other side of the equation. You always see the Al Sharptons, the Jesse Jacksons, the Black Caucus, and this is astonishing to me, to watch elected congressmen standing in the well and doing their race-baiting tap dance, doing their race hustling, whatever you want to call it, to make sure they get reelected is astonishing. And it's just, it can't be any more un-American. And I'm sorry, I don't see it as helping the black community, as apparently the Reverend Gentry doesn't see it. And I will call him the Reverend Gentry. I will not refer to Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson as Reverend. I don't care if they have a sheepskin that proves it. They have done nothing that I have seen over the many, many years that shows them as being godly men. Enough of that. All right. Now here's another one. I pulled this off the internet, and I wish I could give you this man's name. I don't know who he is. I guess he's speaking from San Francisco, and you'll gather that by his baseball cap, and that's all I can gather. I don't know who he is, but here's another diverse opinion. We love diversity, don't we? Okay, let's have a little diversity. Are we ready on that action? Okay, here's another voice.
What's up, y'all? I know it's a pretty diverse group of people that's watching this, and that's cool, but this one's going out specifically to my black people. Now, I'm going to say this once. Yes, slavery was one of the most horrific things that ever happened in human history. Yes, racism still exists. It's probably always going to exist. Just get over that. And yes, there are law enforcement officers out there that take things too far, abuse their power. They're humans. We're a flawed species. With that being said, today we're going to talk about personal responsibility. Black people, it is 2014. Hate to break this to you. If your life is messed up, it ain't because of slavery. Your ass was never a slave. You probably ain't know nobody that was a slave. You probably don't know nobody that knew nobody that was a slave. Slavery ended a long time ago. Yes, it put us in a big hole in this country, but guess what? Dig your way out of it. Civil rights, about 50 years ago. I don't know if y'all know, we won. We Google it, we won. Yeah, it was a fight. They marched, they sat in, we won. So in 2014, if your life is messed up, look in the mirror, figure out what you're doing, what you're not doing, take some personal responsibility for yourselves, for your lives. I understand, sometimes you can't help the hands you were dealt. You were born in the ghetto, in the projects, you were born in a bad situation, nothing you can do about that. But what you can do is do your best to get out of it. If you live in a messed up neighborhood, let me give you a little advice. Stop messing it up. Ain't no rich white man sneaking into the hood in the middle of the night, spray painting graffiti, peeing in hallways. George Bush ain't out in the neighborhoods selling crack on the corner. You know what I'm saying? If your neighborhood is messed up, it's because the people in the neighborhood continually mess it up. All this, oh, stop snitching, everything like, no, start snitching. Go out there, clean your neighborhood up, and then keep it clean. Somebody come through after y'all clean it up, messing up, snitch on them. Call the police. Y'all like to pull your little camera phones out and record little ignorance and put it on World Star? Pull your camera phones out and record crime, get out to the police, so that way people can be prosecuted and we can stop this cycle. Teach your kids something. Guess what? Swag and Jordans, everything like that, that's cute. But guess what? No, get you an education. Get an education, get a job, better yourself, better your situation. Let's talk about the police violence. Told y'all the other day, you know, stop bringing stuff upon yourself, be complicit. The little video of my man Powell that got shot in St. Louis. Why would you think it's a good idea to run up on two cops when they tell you to stop, put down whatever you got? I'm going to keep coming at them, then they're going to shoot me. Now it's black people, we supposed to be mad, and oh my God, we need to go out there and march right. No, we don't. No, we don't. No, we don't. Stop doing crime. Here's the thing. Let's talk about Trayvon Martin for a second. Now, George Zimmerman had no business running off on that kid, and it's a shame that somebody lost their child. But the thing that nobody talked about with Trayvon Martin, in this day and age, why is it that when people see a young black man, the first thing they think of, what's he doing? Is he up to no good? He looks like trouble. You know why that is? Because that's our perception. Because that's the perception that we keep giving people. The way we act, the way we carry ourselves, the fact that how many young men out there have criminal records before they turn 18? How many men out there before they turn 25 have been incarcerated at least once? And then we want to talk about, oh, the justice system isn't fair, they come down hard on us. Okay, that may be true, but did you do it? Just because they gave you more time than they might have gave the white person, if you hadn't done the crime in the first place, you wouldn't have got any time. So stop using that as a damn excuse. If you already know that they're going to come down hard on you, that should be even more of an incentive to stop doing crime. Stop being ignorant. Stop glorifying ignorance. This little rap lifestyle that we looking at, Lil Wayne, all these rappers out there, that's not real life. That's the kind of life that leaves you dead or in jail. And it's a damn shame that in 2014, we are still talking about this. We are still talking about the same stuff that's been all in the Tyler Perry movies, all in the John Singletary movies that we was talking about back in the 90s, Boys in the Hood, black on black crime, stop killing and looting. We need to stop being ignorant, take some responsibilities for ourselves, change our perception, the way people see us in the world. You want the cops to stop messing with you? Stop giving them a reason to. You get pulled over for DWB, for those of y'all don't know, that's driving while black. Don't be mad at the cop. Be mad at the brothers that came before you to give the reputation to the black man. For a cop see, hey, look, there's a car full of brothers. They're probably up to no good. Get to the point where when cops pull us over for nothing, they keep coming up empty. Eventually, they'll stop pulling us over. But right now, hey, there's a car full of brothers. Let's pull them over. Oh, somebody got a warrant. Oh, somebody got a weapon. Oh, somebody got some drugs. So yeah, they're going to keep doing it. Why? Because it works. You go to the crap table, you roll the dice, you keep coming up with 7, you keep rolling the dice. You start crapping out, you'll stop rolling them damn dice. Stop giving the police, stop giving the public at large reasons to look at us like we're second-class citizens. We get looked at like that because a lot of us act like that. And it may not be the majority of us, but it's the perceived majority of us, because it's the ones that you see out there on the World Star videos, on the internet, on Facebook, just acting ignorant, just acting like we don't have no damn sense, like we don't have pride as a people. Have some pride in yourself. Take responsibility for your life. Everything is not somebody else's fault. Sometimes it's just you. Empire. I'm just saying.
I like his clear way of speaking. I realize that grammatically he probably isn't going to pass any political test. Maybe he will, but he certainly articulated what's on his mind, and I think he made the point very well. And I kind of got a kick out of it because his language is street, sort more or less. Got his cap on sideways in kind of the thug way, you know, wearing his red shirt that in Los Angeles would mean he was a blood with the red hat and all that stuff. But the man has his wits about him, and he makes a good point, right on top of the Reverend Gentry's point. And it is that the white man isn't the one spray painting his walls in the neighborhood. The white man isn't the guy going peeing in the hallways and making a stink. And I thought he was very, very clear on that. Took me a little time to get the cadence because he's speaking kind of off ghetto, so to speak, but sharp man, and I really appreciated that. But here again, that's not the only voice. The only voice you keep seeing as the only voices are the race baiters, the race hustlers, like Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson. And again, I hate to see the NAACP as what they have become from what they were when they started. They started with a clarity of thought, with conscience, with dignity, with a purpose that, and I may not have even liked everybody involved with it. W. Du Bois, you know, the guy was a communist, all right, but there was a clear purpose. It wasn't just race hustling. It wasn't just race agitating, but it has fallen to that, and I'm sorry to see that. This is an organization that's been around for, what, 100 years? Had so much to offer and has done so much good, and now they've just descended to the same level as Al Sharpton. The Black Caucus. By the way, do you know of a White Caucus in the Senate or in the House? I don't know. I know the Black Caucus. They stand in the well and they say the same things. In fact, one of the congressmen got in there and did the hands up, don't shoot. Well, I say pants up, don't loot. And it would be nice to see. I'd love to see a Republican, a Democrat, anybody that would come in there and actually, you know, give some straightforward talk on that. All right, we've got still another voice. Here again, this isn't Ralph Lillig. These are things that you can get them just as I did. Are we ready on number 3, Josh? Okay, please pay attention to this one.
The last thing I want to talk about, and I wasn't scheduled to talk about this. This is important. Someone mentioned Eric Holder. And I'm known for not sugarcoating things. This pissed me off. I sat up and watched as events unfold in Ferguson, Missouri. Unfortunate situation, obviously. Anytime a law enforcement officer uses force and takes a life, it deserves a thorough, transparent vetting, investigation. We all kind of agree with that. But then some groups started to converge on the small town of Ferguson, Missouri, like vultures on a roadside carcass. Groups like the new Black Panther Party, people like Al Sharpton, to come and exploit that situation, and instead of coming in to help and try to restore calm, poured gas on that fire with some of their inflammatory and irresponsible rhetoric. And I sat up there and listened to Governor Nixon, and I sat up there and listened to Claire McCaskill, the senator, and then I sat up there and listened to Eric Holder throw law enforcement officers under the bus for political expediency. These are the same individuals at election time that come around wanting support from law enforcement organizations, right? They all stand up there. I'm supported by this fraternal organization and this police association, and I've received an excellent rating by the... They do that when they need us. But now there was an opportunity to improve their bona fides with some of these interest groups like the new Black Panther Party, to flaunt their racial sensitivity and threw law enforcement under the bus. I expect that from Governor Nixon. I expected that from Claire McCaskill. Those are nothing but two-bit politicians. They do that sort of. That's what politicians do. You know that. But I did not expect that from Eric Holder, who calls himself a law enforcement officer. And instead of talking responsibly, instead of measuring his words, because that's what's needed at a time like that, you got to measure what you say, because tensions are high, and the wrong thing said can make a bad situation worse. And he sat up there and talked about how he has seen law enforcement officers profile. He's been the victim of racial profiling himself, and he named 2 situations. One in a traffic stop in New Jersey, and he said, I remember feeling the indignation as they searched my vehicle. And then he talked about a situation when he was in Georgetown, not too far from here, and how he and a friend were stopped on the way to the movie theater, and they felt that they were racially profiled. And he said, I was a federal prosecutor when those things happened. And I said, wait a minute. Mr. Attorney General, if you felt those officers had violated your Fourth Amendment rights and you're a federal prosecutor and you didn't say anything at the time, on behalf of everybody in the United States, you could have done something if you felt that? You could have made a complaint? Because all of us kind of realize in law enforcement, right? We testify. What do they say in court? If you didn't write it down, if you didn't report it, it didn't happen. And that's what I was thinking. Oh, really, Mr. Attorney General? You didn't report it then. You didn't write it down, but you're telling us some 10, 15 years later for self-serving purposes. I thought, why did you do that? You insulted every law enforcement officer, every man and woman that puts on that badge and uniform every day, risks their lives in service to their community. And I thought, how could you do that? Who cares about what happened to you? What about the people of Ferguson, Missouri right now? Who cares about you, Eric Holder? But he did that for self-serving purposes. So I felt he owed an apology to every man, not to me. I'm a big boy, I have big shoulders. But to every person that serves in your agencies, who puts on that uniform and goes out, and this man sat up there and kind of insinuated that these law enforcement officers go out with some nefarious or malicious intent in their heart to deny people their rights and to indiscriminately shoot and take people's lives for nothing. And I was incensed by that. And that's why I said something publicly. And of course he didn't apologize. And of course he won't apologize. I don't expect him to, but I called him on it. Because that's the same guy who shows up at the Law Enforcement Memorial here in May in Washington, D.C. I've heard him speak. Was that the one 2 days ago as the name of one of my officers was placed on the wall? And he sits up there talking about the courage and commitment of our law enforcement officers across the country, and they serve with dignity and all that stuff. And I thought, you SOB. You didn't talk about the racial profiling then. Why are you bringing this up now? That's why I said something. So the reason why I brought this up today, remember that the next time this guy comes to your town. All right? Because he's on a mission with these investigation and law enforcement agencies anyway. I think right now they're in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Just got done with Seattle, putting these people under consent decrees and basically identifying them as racist institutions and racist cops, so on and so forth. So keep that in mind, okay, when he comes to visit your town and talk to your law enforcement officers or whatever. And when he does, go up and ask him. Have you offered that apology yet, Mr. Attorney General, the one that Sheriff Clark asked you about? Just watch his reaction, okay? Thanks again. Great to see all of you.
You know, it's interesting, when Obama was running for office, and after he took office, one of the things he promised the electorate was he was going to do away with racism. He was going to, heal the nation. And yet, under the Obama administration, 6 years now, we have seen more racist agitation and pot stirring. I don't even know how to describe it. If you listen, if you believe, here's yesterday's Wall Street Journal. Obama seeks to rebuild trust in police. And then he makes statements like he did today. You would think if you were to listen to Obama and Holder and the rest of these guys, they want you to have a picture of, here's this guy, Officer Wilson. And if you listen to these guys, Officer Wilson probably that very day stood in front of the mirror, got up and shaved and looked in that mirror and he said, I need to go find a black man to kill. That's what I need to do. That's the kind of hate and discontent that's coming right from the top of our national government, from the president, from the attorney general, from the NAACP. And I don't say they're all saying it directly. Oh, no. They just imply it so that you can infer these things. They just make these shadowy innuendos that leave you with the idea, every black cop or every white cop that goes to work today is looking for a black man to kill. Well, I don't know about you, but I've really had about all I need to hear from this administration. We need a major, major change. All right. Well, you see that Officer Wilson has now resigned. He didn't want to. This was going to be his career. And interesting. And he resigned, according to his statement, not because of his personal safety, although, come on, this man can't go anywhere, certainly with no safety. And he got married while he was on his forced furlough, if you will. And where's he going to go with his wife? When he has kids, where's he going to go? Where he'll be secure, where he'll be safe. They'll never leave the man alone. And then it was interesting for me, in the Sunday paper, Martin Hackworth. There are very few things that the two of us would agree upon, but I was quite astonished when I read his column. And normally I just kind of give it a quick look for a couple of key phrases. Okay, he's done his usual thing. This time I read the whole thing, because I had seen a couple of things. And Martin Hackworth, now he's a scientist, and he appeared to look at this from a scientific perspective, but he said one thing in here I thought was very good. And this is, here again, it's in the Sunday paper. I'm just quoting out of this one part. I don't give a damn that Michael Brown was racially this or that Darren Wilson is racially that. What I care about is hard to dispute video evidence that shows a thug strong-arming a convenience store clerk shortly before encountering a police officer. I care about forensic evidence clearly indicating that 2 of the shots fired by Wilson at Brown were at very close range from inside Wilson's patrol car. And he always writes well. I don't usually agree with him, but he always writes well. But I applaud Professor Hackworth. I applaud your journal, your entry in the journal on Sunday. Well said. And the thing I like about it was honest. Okay. Does that mean that's all the time we have left is 27? Oh my word. Well, we better hurry to this next one then. Well, we're going to have to skip ahead then. Let's can we move from Raymond Ibrahim and go right to the 3 stages, the 28-minute DVD? Okay. All right. There are 2 things that are foremost all the time now, and one of them is the Ferguson thing, and the other is the continuing slaughter of Christians by the religion of peace. So I thought I would bring you another lesson about the religion of peace and what they really stand for. So let's go ahead and roll that one.
Islam can be a little confusing. You meet a Muslim at the grocery store, nicest person in the world, cute kids, loves America. Later that day, you turn on your television and wait a minute, some other Muslim just blew up the grocery store. What's going on here? Who represents Islam? The peaceful Muslim buying tomatoes or the violent Muslim bombing tomatoes? You'd like an answer, so you open up the Quran. You read Surah 2, 256. There is no compulsion in religion. That sounds peaceful and tolerant. I guess the peaceful Muslims are the true followers of Islam. Then you go to Surah 929. Fight those who do not believe in Allah. That's not nice. Now it seems like the violent Muslims got it right. The evidence points in different directions, so what are you supposed to believe?
Partnership between America and Islam must be based on what Islam is, not what it isn't.
If you've ever wondered why there are both peaceful and violent passages in the Quran, if it's ever bothered you that Muslims demand religious tolerance in the West while Christians and Jews can't build churches or synagogues in Saudi Arabia, if you've never quite grasped why organizations like CARE or ISNA claim that Islam is a religion of peace while they support terrorism behind the scenes, welcome to the most important video you'll ever watch. You can't understand Islam in the world today without understanding one essential fact. Jihad proceeds in stages. As the tiny tadpole grows into the bellowing bullfrog, as the lowly acorn becomes the mighty oak, as adorable Parent Trap Lindsay Lohan transforms into whatever she is now, so also the tolerant toddler of peaceful Islam eventually goes through puberty. That's when we all find out what full-grown, Jew-hating, church-burning, wife-beating, apostate-killing, Allahu Akbar yelling Islam is really like in all its blood-spattered glory. Whether you look at the life of Muhammad, or the early Muslim community, or the Quran, or the Hadith, or the Sirah literature, or classical Muslim commentaries, or modern Muslim scholarship, or the spread of Islam in the world today, you will find the exact same pattern. There are 3 stages in the call to jihad, depending on the status of Muslims in a society. And if you understand these 3 stages, you'll understand Islam, 14 centuries of Islamic history, and the situation we're in right now.
Partnership between America and Islam must be based on what Islam is, not what it isn't.
Stage 1, stealth jihad. When Muslims are completely outnumbered and can't possibly win a physical confrontation with unbelievers, they're commanded to promote peace with non-Muslims and to preach a message of tolerance. For instance, when Muhammad and his followers were a persecuted minority in Mecca, they criticized the beliefs of the polytheists, but they did so peacefully. The revelations Muhammad received during this time proclaimed a future judgment for unbelievers. Allah will one day punish those who reject Muhammad. But in the meantime, to each his own. Live and let live. Coexist. A characteristic chapter from this period is Surah 109.
As the Holy Quran tells us,
"Say, O unbelievers, I do not serve that which you serve, nor do you serve him whom I serve, nor am I going to serve that which you serve, nor are you going to serve him whom I serve. You shall have your religion, and I shall have my religion." Muslims in the West point to passages like this as evidence that Islam is inherently peaceful. But we know from Muslim sources that while Muhammad was calling for religious tolerance in Mecca, he was already planning to conquer the world in the name of Allah. He even tried to lure pagans to Islam by promising them victory over the non-Arabs. Let's look at a passage. One day, some of Muhammad's tribesmen went to his uncle, Abu Talib, because they wanted to arrange a truce with Muhammad. They wanted Muhammad to stop criticizing their beliefs. Watch what happens. Abu Talib sent for the messenger of Allah, and when he came in, he said, "Nephew, here are the sheikhs and nobles of your tribe. They have asked for justice against you, that you should desist from reviling their gods, and they will leave you to your God." "Uncle," he said, "shall I not summon them to something which is better for them than their gods?" "What do you summon them to?" he asked. He replied, "I summon them to utter a saying through which the Arabs will submit to them, and they will rule over the non-Arabs." Abu Jahl said from among the gathering, "What is it, by your father? We will give you it and 10 like it." He answered, "That you should say, there is no deity but Allah." Think about this for a moment. Muhammad's walking around Mecca calling for peace and tolerance. But behind closed doors, he tells the Quraysh, "Join me and we'll rule over the non-Arabs," Christians, Jews, Persians, etc. These groups aren't attacking Muhammad at all, and he's already planning to conquer them. What does he need in order to subjugate the non-Muslims? He needs an army. And so he asks his tribe to convert to Islam. Now, how many times have we seen Muslim groups in the world today calling for tolerance in public, but saying something very different in private? Goes back to Muhammad. One of the key features of stage 1 is taqiyya, concealing Islam's true intentions in order to protect the Muslim community. This was eventually made explicit in Surah 3:28.
as the Holy Quran tells us,
"Let not the believers take disbelievers for their friends in preference to believers. Whoso doeth that hath no connection with Allah, unless it be that ye but guard yourselves against them," taking, as it were, security. Muslims aren't allowed to be friends with non-Muslims unless they're outnumbered and they feel like they're in danger from a stronger adversary. That's when Muslims are told to pretend to be friendly. One of Islam's greatest scholars, Ibn Kathir, comments, "In this case, such believers are allowed to show friendship outwardly, but never inwardly." Abu Darda, one of Muhammad's companions, put it this way, "We smile in the face of some people, although our hearts curse them."
Assalamu alaikum.
Another key feature of stage 1 is victim status. Muslims like to pretend that Muhammad and his followers were persecuted in Mecca simply because they were Muslims. Total nonsense. They were persecuted for antagonizing the Meccans by mocking their beliefs. We read in At-Tabari, "The Messenger of Allah proclaimed Allah's message openly and declared Islam publicly to his fellow tribesmen. When he did so, they did not withdraw from him or reject him in any way until he spoke of their gods and denounced them. When he did this, they took exception to it and united in opposition and hostility to him, except for those of them whom Allah had protected from error by means of Islam." Notice that the pagans of Mecca had no problem with Muhammad preaching Islam. They became angry when he began attacking their beliefs, and they had to put up with quite a bit. Listen to this description of what the pagans went through in their own words. "We have never seen the like of what we have endured from this man. He has derided our traditional values, abused our forefathers, reviled our religion, caused division among us, and insulted our gods. We have endured a great deal from him."
Assalamu alaikum.
Muhammad was condemning their beliefs and their values. He was causing division in the city. Not too extreme from a Western perspective. What's interesting is that when the people of Mecca responded in kind and mocked Islam, Muslims said, "Oh, they're persecuting us. What evil people, attacking us because of our beliefs." Double standards. One of the goals of the stealth jihad stage is to give Islam a privileged status above other religions. But Muhammad's constant antagonism towards the Meccans did lead to actual persecution. And this persecution of the early Muslim community was the best thing that ever happened to Islam. When people heard that poor, defenseless Muslims were being mistreated, they rushed to Muhammad's aid. The Christians of Abyssinia, the Jews of Medina, and various pagan groups all agreed at one time or another to protect Muslims from the mean, bigoted Islamophobes in Mecca. Now keep in mind, Muhammad was already planning to conquer all of these people. But they didn't know that. All they knew was that Muslims were being persecuted and they wanted to help. Once Muhammad and his followers had formed enough alliances and were no longer at the mercy of the Meccans, the message of the Quran suddenly changed.
Partnership between America and Islam must be based on what Islam is, not what it isn't.
Stage 2. Defensive jihad. When there are enough Muslims and resources to defend the Islamic community from attacks, persecution, or criticism, Muslims are called to engage in defensive jihad, fighting unbelievers who pose a physical or intellectual threat to Islam. After the city of Yathrib, now called Medina, agreed to protect the Muslim community, Muhammad and his followers left Mecca, and they were given permission to fight. Surah 22, 39 to 40.
As the Holy Quran tells us,
permission to fight is given to those upon whom war is made because they are oppressed, and most surely Allah is well able to assist them, those who have been expelled from their homes without a just cause, except that they say, "Our Lord is Allah." Did you catch that? According to the Quran, Muslims were kicked out of Mecca simply because they believed in Allah. We've already seen that the Meccans had no problem with Muslims believing in Allah, or even with Muslims preaching Islam. They had a problem with Muhammad mocking their religion and causing division in their city. But again, Muslims needed victim status for their protection, so I guess Allah decided to fudge history just a little.
and throughout history, Islam has demonstrated through words and deeds the possibilities of religious tolerance and racial equality.
Now that Muhammad had several non-Muslim groups ready to defend him, he turned to the primary tactic of stage 2, terrorism. The people of Mecca depended on the caravan trade for their survival. Anyone who had money would invest it, hoping to get back something extra to feed their families. If a caravan was robbed or didn't return, children might starve. So instead of living a peaceful life in Medina, Muhammad started attacking the Meccan caravans. Muslims launched 7 attacks against the caravans, and the Meccans never retaliated. During the 7th attack, Muslims killed a man, and they took the goods and some captives as well. The problem was that it was still the holy month when everyone agreed not to fight. Muhammad was a bit worried about this at first, but then he received Surah 2:17.
As the Holy Quran tells us,
"They question thee, O Muhammad, with regard to warfare in the sacred month. Say, warfare therein is a great transgression, but to turn men from the way of Allah, and to disbelieve in Him and in the inviolable place of worship, and to expel His people thence, is a greater transgression with Allah, for persecution is worse than killing." Persecution is worse than killing. Yes, we killed a man during the holy month when there was a universal agreement not to fight, but you persecuted us, and that's worse. So don't you dare judge us. The Meccans had been trying to avoid war, but it was clear that the Muslims weren't going to stop attacking the caravans, and that Meccan trade and the livelihood of the city would never be safe. So the pagan tribes sent an army to protect the next caravan. Muslims attacked and defeated the Meccans at what became known as the Battle of Badr. Notice that the first real battle between Muslims and non-Muslims was a result of non-Muslims trying to protect themselves from Muslims terrorizing their trade routes.
Islam has a proud tradition of tolerance.
It didn't take long for Muhammad's protectors to realize that they had been duped. Muslims weren't quite the innocent victims they had claimed to be. Muhammad and his followers were far more greedy and violent than the pagans they were now attacking. But these disillusioned defenders soon learned that once you agree to support Muhammad, you don't get to change your mind. Anything other than perfect allegiance to Muhammad becomes grounds for expulsion, seizing property, enslavement, or annihilation. 3 Jewish tribes in Medina found that out the hard way.
A proud tradition of tolerance.
Non-Muslims also learned that no matter how much they disagreed with Muhammad's campaign of violence and intimidation, they had to keep their mouths shut. Muhammad began ordering the assassination of critics during Stage 2. People who spoke out against Islam or wrote poems about Muhammad were brutally murdered. And the citizens of Medina, the very people who had invited Muslims into their city, saw their rights rapidly disappearing in the name of Allah.
Tolerance, tolerance, tolerance.
Stage 2, then, is characterized by defensive fighting those who attack the Muslim community in some way. What we need to get our minds around, however, is that Muslims have a much broader definition of what constitutes an attack than anything we're familiar with. Persecution and military aggression certainly count as attacks, but as we've seen, criticizing Islam counts as an attack. Backing out of alliances after you figure out Muhammad's true intentions counts as an attack. And in the defensive jihad stage, Muslims are ordered to respond to these attacks with physical violence and terrorism.
Partnership between America and Islam must be based on what Islam is, not what it isn't.
Stage 3, offensive jihad. When Muslims establish a majority and achieve political power in an area, they are commanded to begin offensive jihad. Once Mecca and Arabia were under Muhammad's control, the message of the Quran changed yet again. Suddenly, Muslims weren't just told to fight against aggressors. They were commanded to fight non-Muslims simply for being non-Muslims.
As the Holy Quran tells us,
O Prophet, strive hard against the unbelievers and the hypocrites, and be unyielding to them. Surely Allah has bought of the believers their persons and their property for this, that they shall have the garden. They fight in Allah's way, so they slay and are slain. O you who believe, fight those of the unbelievers who are near to you, and let them find in you hardness.
tolerance, tolerance, tolerance.
If Muslims have the military strength to expand their political power and to violently subjugate non-Muslim populations, forcing these non-Muslims to pay tribute, the Quran commands them to do so. Surah 9:29.
As the Holy Quran tells us,
fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and His Messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth from among the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. This verse doesn't order Muslims to fight oppressors or even critics. It orders Muslims to fight those who don't believe in Allah.
tolerance,
tolerance, tolerance, tolerance, tolerance, tolerance.
We find similar teachings in Islam's most trusted collections of ahadith. Sahih al-Bukhari 6924. Muhammad said, I've been ordered to fight the people till they say, La ilaha illallah. None has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and whoever said, La ilaha illallah, Allah will save his property and his life from me.
tolerance, religious tolerance, tolerance, religious tolerance.
Sahih Muslim, number 30. Muhammad said, I've been commanded to fight against people so long as they do not declare that there is no God but Allah. Muhammad didn't say, I've been commanded to fight people until they stop persecuting us. That would be stage 2. It's stage 3. And the same guy who complained just a few years earlier that people were persecuting him because of his beliefs now says he's been commanded to fight people based on what they believe. Total hypocrisy.
Religious tolerance, religious tolerance, religious tolerance.
In the offensive jihad stage, Muslims can also expel Christians and Jews from lands they've been living in for centuries in order to keep certain areas that are important to the Muslim community pure. Areas such as Arabia. In Sahih Muslim 4366, Muhammad says, I will expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula and will not leave any but Muslims. He won't leave anyone but Muslims. Is this a man who promoted religious diversity and tolerance? Only when he was in the minority. As soon as Muslims had control of the government, diversity and tolerance went out the window, along with the Jews and Christians.
We will convey our deep appreciation for the Islamic faith, which has done so much over the centuries to shape the world.
So this is the pattern that's been laid down for Muslims by their prophet. Stage 1, stealth jihad. When Muslims are too weak to fight, they promote peace and tolerance outwardly but never inwardly. They practice taqiyya, they prepare for jihad behind the scenes, they claim victim status, and they seek special privileges for Islam. Stage 2, defensive jihad. When Muslims are strong enough to fight but not strong enough to subjugate the unbelievers, they terrorize their enemies, murder critics, and look for excuses to attack other groups. Stage 3, offensive jihad. When Muslims are in the majority, they violently subjugate all non-Muslims, they strive to expand their political dominion, and they rid important Muslim lands of all non-Muslims. This is the pattern we find in the Quran, in the Hadith, and in the Muslim commentaries.
Assalamu alaikum.
Now, look around the world and tell me what you see. Saudi Arabia, what stage are they in? Stage 3, obviously. Massive Muslim majority. Lo and behold, if you're not a Muslim, you can't preach, you can't build a place of worship, you can't even set foot in the city of Mecca. Exactly what we would expect based on the Muslim sources. Certain places in Africa, and I'd say some areas of Europe, are in stage 2. Muslims have enough fighters and resources and alliances to fight defensively. And what do we see? We see terrorism. We see churches being burned to the ground or blown up in Nigeria and Ethiopia. We see no-go zones forming and critics of Islam being killed, even in Europe. Again, exactly what we would expect based on the Muslim sources. Here in America, where Muslims form a small minority of the population, what stage are we in? Stage 1. What's Islam all about, according to American Muslims? It's all about peace and tolerance. Muslims just want to be like everyone else, but racist hate mongers are attacking them because of their beliefs. That's why we should all be thankful that the government and Christians and Jews are stepping in to defend Muslims from bigots and Islamophobes, just as governments and Christians and Jews stepped in to defend Muslims during the time of Muhammad.
And I consider it part of my responsibility as President of the United States to fight against negative stereotypes of Islam wherever they appear.
My friends, how difficult is this to figure out? What have we discussed that a 6-year-old couldn't understand? Muslims have been using the same playbook for 14 centuries. It's in all their sources. It's as plain as day. And yet, our leaders and the media just can't understand why Christians and Jews are second-class citizens in the Muslim world, or why Muslims in Europe are ready to kill over cartoons, or why Muslims in America are so desperate for victim status they'll cry discrimination when a home improvement store doesn't pay for advertising on one of the most boring shows ever. It's all right here. If someone can't understand this, I'd say he doesn't want to understand it. But we've reached a point in history when we can no longer afford to be willfully stupid. If our leaders are incapable of grasping the 3-step strategy of jihadists, they have no business leading a marching band, let alone a Western nation. Unfortunately, Muslims have been so successful in their stage 1 operations, they've convinced our leaders and the media that the only information we need when it comes to Islam is what's handed to us by terrorist-linked Muslim organizations like CARE.
Bin Laden was not a Muslim leader.
We're officially on our own. If we want to popularize this information, we'll have to do it ourselves. Sending this video to everyone you know would be a good start. I also think someone needs to put this material into a pamphlet so we can all pass out copies. Ah, what's this? It's a double-sided pamphlet discussing the 3 stages of jihad. Seems I've already done most of the work for you. All you need to do is go to my blog, answeringmuslims.com, click on the Jihad tab at the top, and open the 3 stages of jihad PDF pamphlet file. You can print this out, fold it up, and give it to those who need to know about jihad, which is pretty much everyone. Islam's greatest ally in the West is ignorance. Jihadists can't subjugate us through physical force, so they're doing their best to subjugate our minds. The ultimate obstacle to global jihad, then, is an informed population of free people. Wouldn't you like to be an obstacle to jihad in Sharia? I know I would. In 2012, let's make a special, freedom-sized effort to educate ourselves and others about the inner workings of the jihadist machine. And let us call our project Operation Monkey Wrench.
Oh, you cut off the end. Well, that's all right. Just a quick piece that came up. That looked like the end if you hadn't watched the whole thing. While he was going through there, I was going through. I have two versions of the Quran. One is spelled the traditional Qur apostrophe A-N Quran, and this one is a translation by M.H. Shakir, and it's with Tariq Tarsil Quran Incorporated, and they call themselves a nonprofit religious organization devoted to the dissemination of authentic knowledge concerning Islam through the sale and free distribution of copies of Holy Quran and its translation. So this one, I just got this off the internet the other day, and I like it because it has subheadings, makes it a little easier to read. The Quran can be very difficult for Western readers. The other one I got is from Penguin Classics, spelled K-O-R-A-N, one of the westernized spellings, and this one is written by N.J. Darwood, who is originally from Baghdad. And so while he was quoting passages, while David Wood was quoting passages in there, I was looking them up as quickly as I could. He was moving rather quickly to see how authentic or how accurate he was, and he wasn't pulling anything over you. And that's what it says in both versions of Quran. So he's giving you straight scoop. Two things quickly. I want to give a Laurel and hearty handshake to Michael O'Donnell. Not one of my favorite people, and I'm certainly not one of his, but he did a great job on an article in the paper last Thursday, November 27th, Gifts of Life, Organs from Pocatello Boys Save Others. Wonderful article. It shows that he has the capacity to really write well when he's not busy trying to beat up on somebody or going out for a cause. This was a very well-written article, very touching, and I'm sure that the family of this boy were touched by O'Donnell's sensitivity. Very touching. Quickly, Wall Street Journal on November 29th, in Nigeria, legions flee Boko Haram's terror spree, radical Muslim organization that's killing everybody that's not a Muslim, and a lot. And then here's one, bombers kill dozens at mosque in Nigeria. See, some Muslims are not as equal as other Muslims, or if they aren't towing the line, they get killed also. More often than not, it's Christians and Jews. Well, that's it. I want to remind you to tune in Sunday evenings at 5 o'clock in the evening and see Aaron Hayes, my goodness, my good friend, I forgot, Aaron Hayes and his program. Until next week, God bless you. Have a good, safe week. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Good night. Thank you for being here.